Chantal123.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make a super flaky gluten-free pie crust. What you need first is a medium or a large bowl to make this pie crust, and make sure that everything that you are using to create this pie crust is cold, or at least not warm or hot. Let's say you're making this pie crust in the summer. If you want, the best thing to do would be to chill these utensils, put them in the fridge for 10 minutes to half an hour before you start making the pie crust. But right now we're at the end of fall. It's cold in here where we are, and my stuff are cold enough to start using them. And of course, this pie crust recipe will be up on the blog. I will leave a link for it in the description box below, and you guys can follow the recipe on the blog. And I also have a lot of techniques and tips and tricks over there that you can learn from to make the best pie crust that you can make. So to start, we need 2.5 cups of my all-purpose gluten-free flour mix, and again, this recipe is up on my blog. I will leave the link for it down in the description box below. You'll also see it in the blog post for this recipe. You'll see that link there. If you haven't made this mix before, that link will take you to create that gluten-free flour blend. To always get the same consistent results when you are making this gluten-free pie crust, it is preferable if you measure by weight rather than by volume, because the weight can vary from time to time when you're measuring by volume. So the best thing to do, I like to measure by gram because it's more accurate than ounces. And so I'm going to measure 360 grams of my all-purpose flour, and I'm right here just looking at my phone on my recipe on the blog. Even I do that. We need 360 grams. And we are going to add in our dry ingredients first. I'm going to tare the scale, and now we need 5 grams of salt, or that is 1 teaspoon if you don't have a scale. We also need 2 tablespoons of sugar, or 30 grams. And 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum, or 5 grams again of xanthan gum. Put this aside. And now we are going to mix these dry ingredients together. Actually, let me grab a whisk. I'm going to whisk them together. This way all the ingredients will get incorporated together well, so that when we are making the pie crust, we have the xanthan gum and the salt and the sugar dispersed evenly among the flour. And if you guys are interested, I also do a lot more educational stuff on the blog. I talk about different types of flour and why we use what we use and all that. And like for example, in the flour recipe, I explain why we're using these types of flour. And if you want to learn more about gluten-free cooking, just click on the recipe links below or on the website link, and it will take you to my blog, and you guys can dive in there and learn as much as you can, and it's all free. And now we are going to use 2 sticks of butter. That's 226 grams of butter, and we are going to chop them up into cubes. You can also chop them up into thin slices, and then we are going to just put them on over here in the flour mixture. The way how I like to do it is just chop it in the middle like this. And if your hands are hot, you can run them under cold water to cool them down and dry them off really well before you start this, so that you don't melt the butter. And I'm just trying to not touch the butter as much as I can. Okay, and then I chop each these two long pieces into two long pieces again, and then I dice them into cubes like this. And the butter is going to stick to the knife, but that's okay. And because I am touching the butter, I'm going to put it in here, and then we are going to chill all of this together, including the bowl and the flour and all that. They are going to chill in the fridge for 10 minutes. You can also leave them for 30 minutes, just until all the ingredients are chilled, so that the butter does not melt when we are going to mix it with the flour, because we want the butter to stay in chunks and we don't want it to integrate itself into the flour, because it will create a crumbly crust and not a flaky crust. Like for instance, if you were creating maybe like a crumb type of crust for like an apple crisp or something like that, you could create a crumbly crust and mix it with some other ingredients to create that crumb. But we're not trying to do that. We want a flaky pie crust. And this pie crust can be used for so many things. I will be sharing so many recipes with you guys that you can make with this pie crust. If you want to know more about these recipes, you can follow me on the blog and you can see what things I'm creating there. I do share a lot more on the blog than over here on YouTube, because it does take me longer to create these videos, and because life, homeschooling, and a baby does not allow me to create that many YouTube videos as much as I like. I messed up this one. Totally messed it up. I'm gonna cut it into 3 pieces because I messed it up. This butter is crumbling on me. This butter reminds me of a cheese that I used to have when I was a kid. It was, I think, a Dutch cheese. It came in these little square forms of cheeses. My favorite cheese was sort of like cream cheese, and my mom wouldn't let me eat it like on its own. She always wanted me to have it in a sandwich, and I hated eating bread. And at night I would go hide in the kitchen in the dark and eat the cutie cheese while my mom wasn't there to watch me and stop me. So now I'm going to take this and put it in the fridge as it is without covering it or anything, and I'll let it chill for 10 to 15 minutes. You can even let it chill for half an hour if you want. You can go wash the dishes, do something, and then get back to it. The flour mixture and the butter have been sitting in the fridge for about a half hour now, and everything is cold, and I washed my hands in cold water. Hands are hot again. Normally I have cold hands, but that's alright. Anyways, what we are going to do right now is to coat the butter with the flour mixture, so that every cube of butter is coated with the flour mixture. So now that I have coated all the butter with the flour mixture, we're going to take the butter, each cube of butter, you can like cut it in half, or you can also do that before when you're cutting it if it's easier for you. And then you're going to coat it again with the flour and then smush it between your fingers like this until it's about the size of a walnut, half, or something like that. Okay, and make sure to continue to coat these pieces with flour mixture. Like I said, you want the butter to always be covered with flour mixture. We're just going to do this to every single piece of butter. Flatten it out, press it between your finger, or you could also use one of those pastry things. I don't have that. I don't know what it's called. I forgot what it's called. It's basically something with like wires or sharp things on the end. and you use it to smush the butter with it. You don't want to overdo it though, because you want the butter pieces to stay big. You don't want them to get too small, because then the smaller they get, the more crumbly the crust will be and less flaky it will be. As you can see, if a piece of butter is too big, I'm breaking it and then pressing it between my fingers, and then I take it and I coat it in the flour. The bigger the pieces of butter are, the more likely the dough will end up like a pastry puff dough instead of a pie crust. A pie crust is flaky, but not as flaky as a puff pastry dough. That's the word, not pastry puff, puff pastry. Okay, and if you see this as it's going to take you a long time, it's such a tedious job to do, like I said, you could just use one of those pastry things, or you could also use a, can't remember, food processor. There you go. And yes, you can use a food processor too if you want, but make sure to only pulse it and not like run it continuously, because it will mix in the butter with the flour, will cause the crust to be a crumbly crust rather than a flaky crust. Alright, so I'm just going to keep doing this, and you could also use a fork, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I'm done, and this might take me a while. So I better hurry before the baby's awake. And also, I just want to mention that if you feel that your hands are getting too hot and the butter is melting, just put everything back in the fridge again and let it cool down some more for maybe like 10 minutes, and then you can get back to it again. You can also wash your hands with cold water. If the butter is still melting, just put it in the fridge, let it cool down a little bit, and get back to it. Okay, so all the butter has been smushed. And now we are going to put it back in the fridge for 10 minutes to chill it back again. And I feel like this is an important step, because the butter is going to be warming up as you're working with it, unless you're using a fork or something like that, and might still get warm. So it's worth just putting it back in the fridge for those 10 minutes just to chill it back up again, so that we don't have melting butter on our hands. This has been chilling in the fridge for a little bit over 10 minutes because Miss Serenity decided to wake up. And right here I have an egg that I have beaten already, and I'm going to create a well in the center, and we are going to add the egg into the well. And then, using the help of the fork, I'm going to equally distribute the egg among the flour and butter mixture. And if I see a place where the egg has clumped up like this, I'm just going to take it with my hands and spread it among the mixture. I'm going to try to use the fork as minimal as possible. And you can see the flakes here. I do have some small flakes. Most of them are big. I think that's good enough. And now we are going to add in the milk to this mixture, 1 tablespoon at a time. We'll need between 10 to 12 tablespoons of milk. And I like to add and mix. And if I have any clumps of dough that are reserving the moisture in there, and I take them and I break them up to spread the moisture. So that's one. And I'm going to keep doing this until I notice that the dough is starting to hold together to itself. And you want to be as gentle as you can while you do this, because you don't want to break up the butter pieces into small chunks. So that's 2. And the reason why I like to add it 1 tablespoon at a time is so that we don't have a bunch of milk all in one place, and then it will clump up and form a dough. And also you minimize the risk of having too much liquid in there, because then you will create a stiff crust. Okay, so now once you reach this place where the dough is starting to clump up together like this, you are going to try to push the dough together to see if it will hold on to itself together like this. And if it's still falling apart, then you might want to add a little more milk. I think I'm going to need a little more milk, so I'm going to try to do that. Okay, I think I can now. Yep, I think 1 tablespoon was enough to get to this point. So you can see now that I can actually hold the dough together, and it holds together without falling apart. It's moist enough. And once you get to this stage, that took 11 tablespoons of milk for me. It might be different for you depending on the humidity level that you have in your area. So once you get to this stage, you want to stop, and you don't want to overwork the dough. You want to mix as minimal as you want to mix as least as you can. So just gather the dough together like this. I could still see those specks of butter in it. We are going to take a shrink wrap and cover the, well, not like that. Got baby brain on right now. We are going to take the dough and almost done, okay? We are going to take the dough and press it, oh, if I can talk over Serenity, and press it together. And you don't want the dough to be sticky. If your dough is sticky, then that means you have too much water in there. You can fix that when we are rolling it. But what you want to do right now is you want to press the dough together and then wrap it really tight with a shrink wrap. I like to press it like this. And then we are going to chill it in the fridge for half an hour. So now the dough has been chilling in the fridge for half an hour. Now we can roll it the first roll. We are going to do this 3 times, and then we are going to chill it in the fridge for 30 minutes and then, for 10 minutes in between. So to do that, I'm going to lightly sprinkle the counter with some flour here. Ooh, that's pretty. You can see all the pieces of butter in there. That's what you want. You want to see the big pieces of butter in there. Okay, so now I'm going to take it, and I'm also going to lightly sprinkle it on top. And I'm going to sprinkle or rub the rolling pin with some flour also. And then I'm just going to roll it into a rectangle. And as I do this, every now and then I'm going to lift it up and move it over the flour so that it doesn't stick to the countertop. And the first time you roll it, you're going to see that it might break apart. But as you continue to do this process, the third time you roll it, it's going to hold itself a lot better together. You might want to sprinkle some more flour also. And it's going to be easily workable. It's okay if you have cracks in the dough. Like I said, the more you do this, the better the dough is going to hold itself together. See, that's why you want to flour rolling pin. So now it's big enough. I'm going to fold it in half, well, to meet the half part of the rectangle. So on this side, and I'm going to brush off any excess flour. And I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. It's not exactly in half, but that's okay. And then we are going to fold this whole thing in half again, like so. And then I'm going to wrap this whole thing with a plastic wrap tightly to prevent it from drying out. If you want, you can wrap it with 2 layers of plastic wrap. And we are going to take this whole thing and put it in the fridge to chill for 10 minutes. The dough has chilled in the fridge for 10 minutes and now we are going to roll it again. I'm going to lightly sprinkle the cutting board, the counter with flour. You don't want too much because we don't want to dry out the dough. Take it as it is. And if you notice that the dough is drying out a little bit, what you can do is just sprinkle it lightly with some milk or water just to rehydrate it again in the places that it's dry. Flour my rolling pin again. And lightly the surface of the dough. And again, I'm going to roll it into a rectangle. It's okay to press the dough a little if you need to, just to bring it back to the shape that you want it to be. And don't forget to move it so that it doesn't stick to the counter. And if you notice your rolling pin is getting sticky again, just rub it with some my flour mixture. Like I said earlier, I have a detailed recipe up on the blog that includes a lot more information. Very detailed oriented. If I were to explain it all over here in this video, it would take me a very long time. And if you are interested in learning more tips and tricks and more information about elasticity and all that thing that works in here in the making of the pie crust, you can go over to the blog and get all this information along with the printable recipe. Alright, so for this fold, we are going to fold it like a letter. So we're going to pick up the dough and fold it 1/3 of the way. And if you get anything stuck to the counter, just pick it up and put it back over here again and brush off any excess flour. And then fold the other side over it, like so, like a letter. And this is how it looks like. Okay, so now we are going to wrap this up in plastic wrap again. Put it back in the fridge for 10 minutes and get back to the last roll. 10 minutes are over and now for the last and final roll. And for this roll, we are just going to repeat the same technique that we did in the first roll. You can see now that the dough is holding together better. That's good enough. So now again, fold to the center. Where's the center? There's the center. Okay, there we go. That's better. And then fold in half. Now you can cut this in half and put it in the fridge, or you can just store it as it is until you're ready to use it for your pie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to store it like this, and then let it refrigerate let it chill in the fridge for 30 minutes or 10 minutes. I think it's cold enough. I'm not going to chill it for 30 minutes just for the sake of time. And then we are going to roll it to make our pie with. Okay, now for the pie making. I have this pie pan right here. It's about a 9-inch pan, and I have buttered it already. Spread some butter over it. You don't have to do that, especially if it's a non-stick pan. But for just to make sure that the pie crust is not going to stick to the pie pan, for safety measures. I don't want my pie sticking to the pie pan. I went ahead and I buttered it. So now we are going to take our pie crust and divide it either in half, or one side is going to be a little more than the half, and that's what I like to do personally, because I find that I always need extra pie crust for the bottom of the pie pan. So that's what I'm going to do. I have here my favorite knife, and divide it a little bit more than half. And you can roll the pie crust to, I still have a little bit of flour, but I'm going to put a tiny bit more. There we go. I was saying something, but I forgot what it was. Oh yes, you can roll it to either a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch thickness, depending how thick you like your pie crust. Now the thicker it is, the flakier you're going to see, the more flakes you're going to see, obviously. So that all depends on how much pie crust you like. So we're going to put this back in the fridge, and we're going to work with this pie crust. And I want to try as best as I can to shape the crust to the shape of the pan. And you want it to be larger than the diameter over here, along with the height, the diameter including the height of the pan, and 2 inches over that. The more you turn it, the more likely it's going to end up like a circle. And also you're less likely to end up with the dough sticking. Okay, I think it's big enough. Okay, so I'm going to lift it gently on my arm. Put it onto the pie pan, and then I'm going to gently shimmy it into the pie pan. You want to be as gentle as you can, because you don't want to poke a hole into the pie crust. If you do get a hole, take a little piece of the pie crust and put it in there. It's not a hole, but just to make sure I don't end up with a hole. Okay, so now I'm going to just gently press the top of the pie crust to shape it into the form of the pie. And now I'm going to cover this whole thing with plastic wrap and put it in the fridge for 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to be as gentle as I can. It's getting stuck. The reason why we are wrapping it with a plastic wrap is because we don't want the pie crust to dry out when we come to press it with the top pie crust. I really don't like working with cling wrap. And I'm trying my best also not to deform the sides of the pie crust. So now I'm going to transfer this into the fridge for 30 minutes. Now we are going to roll the top pie crust to get it ready for the pie. I have my pie filling already prepared from yesterday, and I'm going to work on rolling this pie crust. Okay, that's good enough. I'm going to set this aside for a second. And now to unravel this mess. Now I'm going to transfer this pie filling in here into the pie crust. I'm going to try to mound it at the top. It doesn't look appetizing right now because it was being chilled, but once it's warm and hot and bubbly, it will definitely be appetizing. So try your best to not let the pie filling touch the sides. And I'm making apple pie here for this recipe. You guys can go to the blog. I will have it there. I'll have the printable recipe as well. And I'll leave a link for it down in the description box below. I'm going to dip the pastry brush with some cold water and just brush the edges of the pie. And I'm going to take my pie crust and transfer it over the pie as best as I can. Got a hole here, but that's okay. I'm going to press the edges together. Actually, I'm going to lift this up and brush both sides with the water so that they can get glued together. And then I'm going to press it together with my fingers. And if you notice that there's a place where it is not sticking together, just get some more water, brush it with it, and try again. I think that's good enough. It doesn't have to be completely stuck together. Now I'm going to run across around the pie, I should say, and just leave about almost 2 inches of pie crust. No, it doesn't have to be exact. The top and the bottom pie crust together. Now I'm going to take, I'm going to take the pie and fold it under the pie pan like this. And tuck it under like that. And I'm going to do this all around the pie. Okay, and just go around and kind of tuck in the pie crust at the top like this. And then now you can decorate it any way you want. I like to do the crimping technique where you take 2 fingers over here, you pinch your 2 fingers, and then you take a knuckle or a finger and just pinch it like that. And you can just go around like this and decorate the whole pie. And if you notice that your fingers are getting sticky, just rub them with some flour. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now you can cut decorative slits in here, or diamonds maybe. Yeah, I'll make diamonds. There you go. And I'll take them and put them somewhere else. You can do this before you place the pie crust on the pie, I should say. It would probably come out nicer. But I'm not a pie decorative expert. My diamond lemons aren't even coming out straight because I'm in a hurry. Now I'm gonna brush some water where I want to stick these and just kind of stick them there. Don't you? And don't throw this excess pie crust. Just collect them together and put them in a plastic wrap, in a shrink wrap, and you can use them for decorating your pies, for so many things. I'll have recipes on my blog pretty soon for all the different things that you can make with pie scraps. Okay, I'm just going to press it together. There we go. Wrap it up tightly and put it in the fridge for when I need it. And right here I am making an egg wash, which is just 1 egg and a couple tablespoons of water, and making a mess as well. And we are going to take this egg wash and brush the pie crust with it. Some egg wash got on the bottom. We are going to put the pie on a cookie sheet and bake it at 425 Fahrenheit for 15 minutes, and then we are going to reduce the temperature to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and bake it for 30 to 40 or 45 minutes, depending how long it takes to bake, until it's golden brown and the inside is hot and bubbly. And now if you were making this yourself, you probably need to chill it because your pie filling might not be as cold as mine and your crust might not be as cold. For me, everything has been already chilled. Everything is super cold, so I'm just gonna put it in the oven at this stage. Look at this. Isn't that amazing? And it just smells amazing. The pie baked for 45 minutes, and now we are going to let it sit and rest until it completely cools down, and then we are going to cut it. And if you cut it before it completely cools down, you are risking having a runny pie. So you want it to cool down completely before you cut into it, so that it can, when you cut the piece of pie, you can have a piece of pie and nothing runny in there. We are going to leave it here to cool down on the counter overnight, and then the next day we are going to come back and cut it. I also forgot to mention that at the end of the 15 minutes, when the pie was baking at 425, I took the pie out of the oven and I put this aluminum foil wrap around it. It's basically just a long piece of aluminum foil that I folded into this shape, and I put it around it and crunched it so that it would stay there, so that the heat doesn't lift it off, and just to prevent the edges from getting extra dark. It's the next day and the pie has cooled completely. We've let it cool overnight, and now we are going to cut into it. I just want to show you guys the inside of the pie, if you can see it. I'll be the screen for the sun. There you go. Okay. I like my pie warm, but I'm just going to try it out like this. Let me show you the flakes on the inside of the pie crust. Can you see this? Look at all the different flakes. The layers, I should say. Look at this. There you go. It's an awesome pie. It's delicious. I do like my pie warm though. After you cut it, you can warm it. And for this apple pie recipe, I will leave a link for it down in this description box below. And also, of course, for the pie crust and for the flour mixture that I use, for the gluten-free flour blend that I use in this recipe. This was it for today. If you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you are new here, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can receive notification of whenever I upload new videos. And please don't forget to share this video with your friends and family so they too can learn how to cook gluten-free, delicious gluten-free food. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode.